Yeah. It bothers me. Yes. That time screen. You know, these days.
But everything else, I reckon, is really good.
You're doing pretty good as far as I know. Yeah, now, who knows? Tell my ask about it. But I'll try to, I'll speak.
Thank you. Jason, I think you got it all. Are you sure you did get rough sometimes?
Drip, little paperback drip.
Roger, talk all pound of flavor. No, sir. I got them pictures out the other day. I'm gonna put them in the I was gonna ask you last week. Ray? Well, I know I hadn't seen him talk to us. Good man. I know. Hello, brother Bobby. How you doing? I always got to look as good as you did. I ain't put no clothes in 20 years. I know it. You just got to. I'm just trying to keep up with that. I go off. I've told people that people come up and talk to you that start doing that. I mean, somebody see you just doing that, that's really following them out. Watch your fingers. Some people kind of talking. I know it, yeah. They're just talking. I've been told a lot of times when I'm preaching, I could have said, I know it. That's about the way I am. Good way you get your double job. No, I'll put that in. Are you all right? All right. How you doing? In 2 weeks from today, I'll be as fast as no, my last was today. I look and see. I'm glad you told me that you had sent me when I know of in my head now is an unbelievable for something like
That was a conflict, wasn't it? I didn't change.
Yeah.
So you're right. They don't need to
So 2 weeks from today, that day is
from that from North Carolina.
yeah. Okay.
And I'll be there from 14th to the 17th.
Okay. That's Sunday through
It's a weekend, it's a tough time. So I'm going to either start on it or Steve. Those are my three people that signed up. Or Link. Link. Them Bible class. September. You ain't on the list. Bible class. I can put you on it.
You better know, brother. If you want to go home.
Well, I could. It comes down on the right side of God. Right in the middle. No, right in the middle. Right center. Yes. It's time. That's time. I know it. 3 minutes. We'll cut it short. All right, it's time. It's past time. Get to talking and enjoying ourselves. 921. Everybody turn to 921. We'll sing the first and the last verses of 921. Yield not to temptation. And then we'll have our prayer. Brother Steve Smith will direct our minds in our opening prayer. Write that down. And then we'll get right into our Bible study. Yield not to temptation, for yielding is sin. His victory will help you some other to win. Fight manfully onward, our passions subdue. Look ever to Jesus, He'll carry you through. Ask our Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through. To him that overcometh, God giveth a crown. Through faith we shall conquer, though all the cast down. He who is our Savior, our strength will renew. Look ever to Jesus, He'll carry you through. Ask the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through.
Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful that you can come before thee this morning, open thy book. We're so thankful for our servant James, and very good information that he gives us to help us to control our tongue, to understand what true wisdom is. And for these good things, we're so thankful that we can call on you and ask for thy help and for thy comfort as we rejoice so many. that we can continue on reading. We come before thee, giving thee praise, glory, honor. Just help us to live in such a way that does that. Help us to do a little better each day. Forgive us of our shortcomings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, everybody get out your review questions. If those of you visiting with us, we are studying the book of James, and we have just finished James chapter number 3. James chapter number 3, and we're about to go into James chapter number 4. But before we do a review, and we're in that review now. By the way, we have finished our summer series. We had some really good speakers to come in, and they all spoke about James, centered around some concepts in James. And we finished that last Wednesday night with Chris Bolton. He did have a handout. If you weren't able to be here Wednesday night and would like to have this handout, there's some extra copies there on the table. So get them on your way out, and we'll get that passed out. And you can even include this handout in your notebook of James. That's what I'm doing. I'm putting it in my James notebook just for a resource. So it'll be something good for everybody to have that's in our James class. But that does complete our Wednesday night summer series, and so we won't be getting that extra help from different speakers coming in. And we have 2 more chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5, but we went right along with them all the way through. But we'll continue to study James until we complete it. So we are in James chapter number 4, about to start, but let's finish our review. We started it last week, James review, chapter 3. We got around number 6 under answer in a few words. Let's just do number 6. What fruit is sown in peace of them that make peace? Yes, everybody answer in unison. It's of righteousness, the fruit of righteousness. Rightness comes in a peaceful way if you sow peace. You sow peace, and then you will get rightness. You don't sow peace, you sow conflict, and you will get wrongness. That's the idea. And so James is teaching us, if you want to get good fruit in your life, sow in peace. Number 7, can we keep offending everybody all the time? Well, no. No, we cannot do that. He said, you just can't, we can't keep from offending everybody all the time. In verse number 2, he talks about that. He says, we always offend people. We do. But with the tongue, something we can't control, we talked about that at length, then we're certain to offend people. Number 8, in James chapter 3, verse 9, James said that it was inconsistent to bless God and curse men. Why? Amen. Man is made in the likeness of God, or by the image of God. So it's inconsistent to bless God and then turn around and curse men, because man is made in the image of God, or in the likeness of God. So it's inconsistent to do that. We should bless God and bless men, not curse men. Number 9, in James chapter 3, verses 3 through 5, what 3 little things did James compare with the tongue? Bits and horses' mouths. That's right. The helm on a ship, that's number 2. What about that third one? Fire. A little fire, a match. A little match fire. That right there is little, but it'll start a forest fire. So those are the 3 things that he compared with the tongue. Bits and horses' mouth that control the whole horse. Helms or rudders and ships control the whole ship. And then a little match fire that's a whole forest fire. That's what he compared it with. Number 10, in verse 17, the wisdom from above has many characteristics. Well, let's name them. Everybody name a couple. Keep going. Good. Good. Yes. 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 Got it. Uh-huh. Without hypocrisy. Anybody else got any more to add? That's pretty much the list, isn't it? That's what the wisdom from above is. You know, gentle, pure. We went through each one of them and talked about the characteristics. That's wisdom from above. What we can learn is that the opposite of those things would be wisdom from where? The world. That's right. Above is heaven, and below is the world. So wisdom from above is gentle, but wisdom from the world is opposite of being gentle, being unkind, being in conflict. All right, let's fill in the blanks with the proper words. This is the King James Version, and all this, is, by the way, is review. For those of you visiting, a reason we're not spending a whole lot of time elaborating on some of these concepts is we've already done it. This is review. So fill in the blanks with proper words. Number one, my brethren, be not many, knowing that we shall receive the greater. Yes, masters, teachers will receive the greater condemnation. And of course, that's not saying that all teachers are going to go to hell. We talked at length about that. It's saying that we're accountable. We're accountable for what we teach. And these people were wanting to present themselves as something great. I want to be a teacher. I want to be better than you. They're promoting themselves. And James was calming them down. Don't do that. Number two, but yes, wisdom, that is from above, is first pure. It's wisdom from above. But, number three, but yes, can no man, yes, it is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. You cannot tame your tongue. Don't try. Now, again, try, but don't live your life saying, I'm going to stop myself from saying this, saying that. No. We talked about this. Change your inside, change your heart, and then the tongue will automatically be better. Won't be perfect, but it'll be much, much better. Number four, this, yes, descendeth not from above, but is sensual, devilish. That's right. Things that's not from above is from the devil. Number five, for where envying and strife is, there is, yes, confusion and every evil word. That confusion, conflict, that's where envy and strife is, that you're going to get this confusion. Number six, the fruit of righteousness is sown in, sure it is, peace of them that make peace. Peace is very critical. Number seven, if any man offend not in, the same as a perfect man. And of course, we're not perfect, but certainly we should try to be. We should try to be better. And so let's work on our tongue. Let's work on our words. Number eight, even so the tongue is sure it is, a little member and boasteth great things. Even if it's a little thing, it can change your life one way or the other. Number nine, out of the same mouth proceedeth, blessing and cursing. Was James happy with that? No. Out of the same mouth proceeds blessing and cursing. He said, my brethren, these things ought not to be so. And then he went to talk about where the fountain comes. If the fountain is pure, the water is pure. If the fountain is bitter, the water is bitter. The tongue is bitter. So that's what he says in number 10. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? And the answer to that is no. The fountain does not produce sweet or bitter if the source of it, if the fountain, if the source is sweet, then it's going to produce sweetness. If it's bitter, it's going to produce bitter. So don't worry about, I'm going to make my word sweet. I'm going to really do some sweet thing. No, change the fountain. Get your heart right. Get your heart sweet. And then it'll flow sweetness. Let's write true or false in the blank by way of review. Number one, in many things we offend all. That's true. We can't help it. We do that. But the tongue, we really offend folks. Number two, our tongue, or words, has no effect on our body or life. False. It has very much effect. Our words change the course of our nature or our life. Number three, a wise man endued with knowledge lives a life of good works. That's true. if we're endued with knowledge and we're wise, we use that knowledge in a wise wisdom from above, then certainly we are going to produce righteousness or good works, right stuff. Number 4, James compares the tongue to a fire. True, he does. It's a little fire, a little match that sets the forest on fire. Number 5, James compares the tongue to bits in horses' mouth and steering wheels in cars. False. What makes that false? Yeah, the steering wheels in cars. James didn't know what a car was. But the helms in ships is what he compared it with. Number 6, man has tamed every kind of beast, bird, serpent, and sea lion. That's true. That's true. In verse number 7, he tells us man has accomplished that. Not individual people. I haven't trained a seal, or I haven't trained a lion, but mankind has. We've trained all kinds of beasts, birds, serpents, sea lion, ocean, in the air, on the reptilian. We trained them all, but we cannot tame the tongue. That's James's point. Number 7, James says the tongue is full of deadly poison. That's true. Our tongue can change life in a negative way. So get the heart right, makes the tongue better. Number 8, man can tame the tongue. False. You cannot do it. Don't try. Don't live your life thinking, well, I'm just going to tame my tongue. You're not. Change your heart. Tongue's better. Number 9, envy and strife bring confusion. That's true. Where envy and strife is, you're going to have chaos and confusion. Number 10, it is okay to have envy and strife in your heart as long as you do some good things. False. You know, Jake, well, look at all the good that I'm doing, but it comes from a heart of envy and strife and bitterness. That's not okay. James said that's not the way. Blessing and cursing can't happen. All right, let's do the extra. Most try to control their tongue by watching what they say and practicing self-control. But what is the only real way to keep guard over your tongue? Hey, change your heart. Change your heart. Change the source. Verses 11 and 12 tell us about that. And how do we do that? We do that by developing true wisdom, gentleness, peacefulness, all the things that are characteristic, easy to be entreated, reasonable. When we develop that kind of heart, that kind of spirit, that kind of wisdom, then our tongue comes out so much better. And therefore our life is better. Not just our life, but those that are in the sphere of our influence. Any comments about that? Change an answer? Need an answer? We went too fast and you didn't get it? All right, take your pen and put a check mark on that chapter number 3 and tuck it away, because we have just finished the James review of chapter 3. So I'm going to tuck that away in my notes. And we're going to be, by the way, go ahead and be working on James chapter number 4 review, but you're not in a hurry to do it until we get to the end of James 4. So get out your outline. Everybody get out your James outline and notice that we are really moving on. We're all the way down to Roman numeral number 5. Roman numeral number 5, and that covers James chapter 3, verse 1, and it goes all the way to 4, verse 17. And we've already looked at James chapter 3, verse 1, all the way through 12, chapter 3, 12, and that's, our attitude. All this is about our attitude toward ourselves, how we need to work on ourselves. And the first thing is work on your tongue. And the second thing is true wisdom. That started in chapter 3, verse 13, and it went all the way down to chapter 3, verse 17. Talks about how true wisdom works. It is so good. But then we're moving into the next session of attitude toward ourselves, and it began actually in chapter 3, verse 18. We just finished chapter 3, and the very last verse of James chapter 3, verse 18, actually ties into chapter 4 and following. And he's going to be talking about all the way from chapter 4, all the way to chapter 4, verse 10. And he's going to be talking about pride, selfishness, And this brings wars. But on the other hand, humility, not pride, not selfish, brings peace. So this is working on ourselves. My attitude toward myself is, how do I get peace in my life? And not wars and conflict. So he began the discussion in chapter 3, verse 18, that we've already looked at. The fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them, or by them, that make peace. Peacemakers are the ones that sow in peace, and the fruit of that is rightness. It's a right kind of life. It's righteousness. So James begins this part of his discussion saying, you want a good things in your life? Then find peace, sow peace, work peace. And then he's going to talk about that. Beginning in chapter 4, verse number 1. In order to understand where peace comes from, we got to understand where conflict comes from. Because if I understand where war comes from, then I can say, okay, I don't want that. I want peace. The opposite of war is peace. So I really would like to see where my conflict comes from, and then I can deal with the source of my conflict, and that will generate peace. Does that make sense? So he asked the question. Verse number 1 of chapter 4. From whence, or from where, comes wars? That's conflicts. And fightings among you. Where do they come from? That's a good question. Why are we always fighting? Why are we always in an unpeaceful atmosphere? Come they not hence, or do they not come from, even your lusts that war in your members? They come from inside you. They come from your desire. That's lust. They come from your desire. Now, we can go to 1 John. Everybody keep your pen or pencil or thumb right where we're at, and go to 1 John chapter 2. Just flip a couple of pages over. 1 John chapter 2, and go to verse 15. James is contrasting wisdom from above, wisdom from below, in the world, heavenly wisdom, worldly wisdom. John does the same. In 1 John chapter 2, verse 15, he says, love not the world. Don't get involved in worldly stuff. Neither the things that are in the world. All this worldly stuff and the things in the world, don't fall in love with that. If any man love the world, if you're involved in worldly things, the love of the Father is just not in you. And therefore, there can be no peace. We can tie James in with that. If you don't have God's love in you, then there's going to be ultimately no peace. No wisdom from above is no peace. But then John explains the lust. He says in verse 16, all that is in the world, everything that you're involved in the world, he goes on to say, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and what, class? Pride of life. Those three things, they're not of the Father. They're not from above. They're not from God. But they're of the world. They're from worldly stuff. John kind of gives us more concrete what James is saying. Does not war come from your lust? The stuff that's inside you. Well, what's inside you? Lust of your eyes. You know, you want it, you see it. We could call that covetousness. Lust of the eyes. I look at Ed White and I see what he has and what he's accomplished, and I could have lust for that. I can covet that. And I want, you know, why don't I have his car? And he has a bleeding ulcer. You know, ain't that sad? You know, why don't I have, you know, and that lust, that covetousness in my heart will produce conflict between me and Ed. And if Ed looks at Jason and he said, why ain't I so youthful and so good looking? You know, why do I have to be so ugly and old? You know, that could produce a conflict between those two. Going in the wrong direction. Say again? Oh, yeah, God don't love people who sow conflict between brethren. But I'm just illustrating that could have discord among brethren. God don't love people. He abhors people that sow discord between brethren. Well, how do you do that? Well, you appeal, in one case, to the lust of their eyes. You say, hey, he don't have what you have. And when you're doing that, you're going to sow discord between these two people. It's just going to happen because you're appealing to the lust of their eyes. Maybe appealing to the lust of their flesh. This is what I want to satisfy my flesh, whatever that may be. First thing most people's mind goes to is sex. You're going to look at somebody, you lust in your flesh. But there's all sorts of ways to lust in your flesh. I want this to fulfill my desire. Boy, if I had that, it would make me happy. Well, I can have lots of conflict if I go to satisfy my desires of my flesh. Humility, on the other hand, says, I will not satisfy the desire of my flesh. I will satisfy the desire of my spirit. Flesh versus spirit. Of course, Paul talks a lot about that. Live by the spirit, not by the flesh. And so that will produce a lot of conflict. And then, of course, there's the pride of life. That's huge. In my opinion, this is only my opinion, I believe it all hinges on that. Every sin you can think of, you just name a sin. It will, why did he do that sin? Well, for this reason. Well, why about that? For this reason. Why that? For this reason. And if you keep on asking enough whys, the kernel of it, the seed of it is pride. Because you want it to satisfy the lust of your eyes and to satisfy the lust of your flesh. It's all about you. And that's the pride of your life. I'm better than anybody else, and if I want it, I should have it. It's all me, myself, and I. That pride of life will absolutely cause conflict between people, between you and the world, everybody. So James, let's go back to James. James chapter number 4. He says, where does all this fighting and this wars or conflict, where does it all come from? I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from inside your heart. It comes from the lust of your eyes, the lust of your flesh, the pride of your life. Comment about that. Agree or disagree? Agree. Yes. You show me two brethren or two cisterns. If you show me two members of the church having serious conflict between each other and dig into it, you'll discover that it comes from inside their heart. It comes from there. It started there, and it escalated to something that you can see. It's tangible. But it comes from your heart. And so James is saying we don't want conflict. We want to sow peace. So the ultimate goal is to have peace. Now, when being Adam, we see that there's maybe some conflict developing. We got to get together as brethren, and we say, look, our ultimate goal is peace. And we're going to sow peace. We're going to plant peace into this thing. We're going to use God's wisdom. We're going to say pure, gentle, reasonable, approachable, all these things. We're going to sow that into this issue that we're going to have. Then as we develop, sure, we're going to have the lust of our eyes, and we're going to have the lust of our flesh. We're going to have the pride of our life because that's in us. That's where it is. So we got to recognize that. Hey, Adam, when we got to this point in our discussion, I noticed that some of that lust of that pride in your life started sticking its little head up. Oh, you're right, David. Thank you for pointing that out. You're reasonable. That's wisdom from above. And we can resolve the conflict. But if we don't use wisdom from above, then that conflict is just going to escalate to the point that we're going to have rifts and splits. And that's devilish. That's from worldly wisdom. James explains. Look at verse 2. You lust, that means you have desires, and you have not. You come short of what it is that you desire. And then he says, you murder, or you kill. You murdered. Wow. Now, are some of these Christians that he's talking to murderers? Maybe. Not going to say that they're not murderers out there. Of course, if they are murderers, would they be Christians? They could be Christians that got so upset that they murdered somebody. But even if he is talking about murder, then so be it. You can get so much conflict, so much anger, so much hate that it'll lead you to murder. But Jesus has addressed this in the Sermon on the Mount, in that great sermon with all these principles. He said, you have heard it said, thou shalt not what? Kill. Thou shalt not kill. Murder. Don't take somebody's life. Thou shalt not kill. Then Jesus went on to say, but I say unto you, don't even what? You remember? Don't even hate your brother. Don't even hate him. Because what will that hate in your heart lead to? The murder, the action. Jesus, throughout the entire Sermon on the Mount, is contrasting physical and spiritual. You've heard it said, this physical thing, don't kill nobody, don't commit adultery. I say unto you, don't even hate them. And don't even lust in your heart after them. Because the hate will lead to the murder, and the lust will lead to the adultery. You trying to fix the physical. Jesus is saying you need to fix the spiritual. If you fix the spiritual, then if you don't hate them, you won't kill them. If you don't lust in your heart after her, you will not commit adultery with her. That's the point. And so James is saying these same principles. He's saying, you have this desire, and it will lead you to do. Look at the rest of that verse. You desire to have, and you cannot obtain. You fight and war, and yet you have not. You're trying to fulfill the lust of your eyes. You're trying to fulfill the lust of your flesh and the pride of your life, but it will not fill it up. It will not do it. And by the way, if I have a lust in my eye, I covet something, I want it. If I just had that, I will be so happy. If I just had her, I would be so happy. If I just lived in that house, I would be so. If I just had that job, I'd be so happy. And when you get it, how long does that last? 5 minutes. You got it now. All of a sudden, not so happy. I mean, maybe I was for a while, 5 minutes. But you realize you want more. Then you want more. And then you want something else. Because you can never fill up the lust of your flesh. You can never fill up the lust of your eyes or the pride of your life. If you try to feed it, you will not have it. Why? Because that's not wisdom from above. That's worldly wisdom. And that leads to conflict and no peace. You think, I'll be at peace. If I just got that job, I'll be at peace. You get the job, you're not at peace. You might be for a little while, but you're not at full peace. You want something else. Or you just live in that job as best you can, unhappy. Or whatever. Here's the point. You're trying to fill the lust of your flesh. Now, I can go to a job digging ditches and be very happy doing it. You say, well, I don't fulfill the lust of your flesh and the lust of your eyes and the pride of your life. Everybody thinks digging ditches is not so prideful. It's a humble job. But I can be. Why? Because I employ the wisdom from where? Above. Contentment. Beautiful. Paul said, I have learned. It's not something that just comes naturally. What comes naturally is the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life. That's what comes naturally. But Paul said, I have learned to be content with what I have, even if I'm digging ditches. Don't matter. I've learned it. And where was Paul when he said that? You remember? In Philippians? Yes. He wrote it to the Philippians, and he was in jail when he wrote it. One of the prison epistles. Paul said, I'm in jail. House arrest. But I've learned, even in jail, that I can be content. Why? Because he employs the wisdom. He's pure and gentle and approachable and all these things. And that's how peace comes. You can lay your head down at night in peace because you're employing the wisdom from above. Not worldly wisdom. Worldly wisdom says get it. Worldly wisdom says step on the fella to get yourself up the ladder. You know, lie, cheat, steal, whatever you got. That's worldly wisdom. But that's not wisdom from above. And James is saying in this verse, you try to feel this lust in yourself, and you never obtain it. You never find it. Why? Look at the end of that verse. You ask not, because you're not asking the right question for the right thing. Go back to chapter 1, verse 5 of James. Yes, sir. You already know, because we have the wisdom from above. That's great for those of you in Facebook land. Adam makes a great point. Solomon had all this wisdom, and he said, I tried all the fleshly stuff, wine, women, building great projects, you know. None of it makes, it's all vanity, he said in Ecclesiastes. But he said, let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter at the very end. Fear God and do what? Keep His commandments. Wisdom from above. Wisdom, apply His wisdom, and then that will satisfy you. Yes, Ed. Uh-huh. Yep. Amen. Love. That fulfills it all. That's the wisdom from above. It falls in place, all because you're not lusting after this or that or the other, expecting that to make you happy, because you love God. That's what makes you happy. Yes, Roger. Yes, sir. Peace that passes all understanding. Because the human self, they don't understand that. How can you be at peace? You're digging ditches. You know, how can you sit here smiling, going and doing back-breaking work, sweating and making pennies? How can you do that and be at peace? That's peace that passes all human understanding. Thank you, Roger. That's exactly right. All understanding. Because most people interpret peace as worldly. If I can just get the things of the world. But that doesn't bring peace. It brings conflict. It brings wars among you and fighting. And that's what James says in James chapter number 1. He says in verse number 5, if any of you lack what? Wisdom. Let him ask of God, because He gives wisdom to all men liberally. We talked about this already. Abradeth not, it shall be given him. And that's what he says in chapter 4. That's where in our study. James chapter number 4. Look again. And he says in verse number 2, at the very end, you don't have this peace. You don't have what you're really looking for because you ask not. And I personally believe he's not saying, well, you don't ask. The reason you don't have money is because you're not asking God for money. The reason you don't have health is because you're not asking God for help. If the reason you don't have all this worldly stuff out here that you think will satisfy your eyes and your flesh and your pride, the reason you don't have that stuff is because you're not asking God for it. Now, Jesus did say that if you ask God for stuff, He's your Father, and He wants to give you stuff. And that's good. And I'm not saying that we should not ask Him for stuff. We should. We should ask Him for stuff all the time. Pray over your tomatoes. I begged Steve to pray over his bell peppers because I got some. You know, it's okay to ask God for stuff. That's great. If it be His will, you're praying into His wisdom. His will is full of His wisdom. And if you're praying into that will, what is this stuff, your wisdom that's gonna bless your kingdom in some way, and me spiritually, or even physically. So I'm not saying that we should not ask Him for stuff. But what I think James is saying here, you're pursuing all this stuff, but you're not happy. You're not receiving it. You're fighting and murdering and pursuing this and fighting for it. But you don't have any. You don't have it. Why? Because you're not asking the right question. And I personally believe what he's saying is you ain't asking for wisdom from above. You lack wisdom. You're not asking for it. In chapter number 3 that we just now studied, from verse 13 through 17, he talks about that wisdom. He just got through talking about the wisdom from above. And he just went right on into talking about you don't have peace because you're not asking for wisdom from above. I personally think that's the tie there. You don't have fulfillment because you're not asking for God's wisdom. You have God's wisdom into God's will. It doesn't matter what. You can be in jail like Paul and be content and have peace. Yes, sir.
David, you can ask for legitimate needs.
Sure.
But if you have the wrong motive and the wrong purpose in mind, you can ask for things that lie within yourself, but with a desire to misuse them in some way that could be disrespectful to God, you're not going to be asking for the wrong motive.
Thank you for that. Those in Facebook land, thank you for that. Ed makes a great point. You can ask for these needs, these legitimate needs. If you do it with the wrong motive, James addresses that. Let's look at the next verse. Verse 3. You ask, and you receive not. Wait a minute, I thought you didn't ask. He says you ask not, and then he went in and says you ask. Well, which is it? Did they ask or did they not ask? Well, his point is, maybe they were asking. Hey, give me that big house. Give me that big fine car. Give me this stuff because I lust after it. I want it. Well, you ask, and you don't receive joy. You don't receive peace. Even though you're asking for these things, you don't receive it. Why? Because you ask what? Amiss. That's Ed's point. You're asking it wrong, in the wrong spirit. What does that mean? Here it is. Here's what asking amiss is. That ye may consume it upon your what? Lust. What he's been talking about the whole time. You ask him to fulfill the lust of your flesh, to fulfill the lust of your eyes, to fulfill the pride of your life. You're asking it for selfish desires. And therefore, you're not going to be happy. You could ask all day long for it. And you, even if you get it, you won't be happy. Because you asked, you pursued so that you could fulfill your own desire. And that's wrong. Yes, sir.
That's the attitude of the Pharisees in Jesus' day.
Yeah. Yeah, standing in the street corner. Yes. They were praying long prayers, standing in the street corners, and everybody looking at, ooh, what a religious person that is. How faithful and righteous he is. No. They were doing it to be what? Seen of men. To fulfill the pride of their life. That was their only purpose of having these prayers and asking these things of God. And therefore, God doesn't bless that. But if you're in a very humbling situation and you're asking God, as Roger pointed out, if it be thy will. God, I have a desire. I have a legitimate request, and I'm going to ask you for it. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, God encourages it. Jesus encourages it. Whatever you ask in my name, I'll give it to you. That's what he says. So he encourages us to ask in the name of Jesus things and stuff. But as Roger pointed out, you're doing it into his will. If it be thy will. would you give me this, that, and the other? And therefore, you're approaching it with wisdom from above, and you will be at peace, whether you get it or not. That's the beauty of it. A lot of people say, well, I asked God for that 5 times, and I didn't get it. So, shame on God. Well, you're asking wrong. You're asking amiss. You're asking to fulfill it upon your own desires. But if you say, God, if it be your will, I'd like to have this, that, and the other, and you don't get it, then you say, okay, my reason and my rationale because of wisdom from above is, God, it's not right for me at this time. Now, I'm going to be content with whatever God gives me. That's the concept. And did. And Paul could have been bitter, but he wasn't bitter, he was better. I love that. Now, James is not shifting gears, he's just going to go deeper. Now that he's explained where war comes from, conflicts come from, how you can have peace, and how sometimes you don't have peace because you're trying to consume it upon your lust, he's going to talk deeper about this lust. Look at verse number 4. You adulterers and adulteresses. Now, is he literally talking about they are committing physical fornication? Maybe so. Just like he may be talking about they were literally killing people back in the verse number 2. But he may be alluding to the fact you're committing adultery when you're trying to have a relationship with the world and having a relationship with God at the same time. If I'm trying to have a relationship with a woman, Deborah's in here and she says she's dead. If I'm trying to maintain a relationship with my wife and a relationship with another woman, what am I doing here? What am I doing? Adultery. That is adultery, folks. That's what it means to commit adultery. It's trying to have a relationship with 2 people, your wife and some other woman. That ain't going to work. That's not going to work. It is the epitome of conflict. There's great. It was said by the wise sage of our time, trying to please 2 women is like a ball and chain. You ain't never heard that song? That wasn't so sage. But even the world knows that will cause conflict. So I think what James is saying is, let me explain it this way. If you try to please God and have a relationship with God, and at the same time have a relationship with the world, it can't happen. You adulterers and adulteresses, know you not, or don't you know that the friendship, the relationship of the world, or with the world, having a relationship with the world is what with God? Enmity. What does it mean to be an enemy? Hatred. Against. Hatred. Violence. If you try and do have a relationship with the world, then you have just become an enemy to God. You've just broken your relationship with God. Eneminess means no relationship. Somebody said, well, I got a good relationship with my enemy. No, you don't. You might talk to them or you might have some communication with them. You don't have a relationship. Maybe it depends on, I guess, on how you define relationship. But God, you have just become God's enemy if you try to have a friendship or a relationship with the world. He said, don't you know that? Yes, sir, Ed.
Go back to Jeremiah chapter 3 and verse 8, where God talks about Israel having committed adultery. Of course, he talks about that. They're him and serving the world and gods around about them. God said, I'm going to put you on. I'm going to put you away.
Yeah.
Spiritual adultery. That's what James is talking about.
Amen. I think so. It goes. Thank you for that. It goes back to Jeremiah. That Israel as a nation was committing spiritual adultery with the world, and God said, "Okay, I'm going to cut you off." And we'll pick up with that. And remember, look at verse 5. We didn't get to it, but next week we should get to verse 5. And there's a statement at the end of verse 5 that I'm struggling with. I still don't know the answer. What I'm going to do next week is to give you two interpretations of what I see at the end of verse 5. Does he mean this or does he mean that? And I would like, and if you could come up with some other interpretations of verse number 5, I'm sure willing to hear it. Want to hear it. This is a Bible class. We study the Bible here. And we may walk away next week with consensus that we all agree that it's